Buyers everywhere, but not a house to buy. This is the real story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates with 35 years of experience in Contra Costa County share all sorts of things about real estate, mainly for our clients, some for our colleagues, and really just because we like hanging out with each other.
Yep,
So, hi, Sherry. How's everything going this week?
it's been a good week and it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, this is kind of a special podcast. This is number 20 for us. I heard that most podcasts don't make it to 20 episodes, so we're already above average.
All right, good. Well, that's good to know. I like
Yeah.
above average.
Yeah, somebody's got to be above average, right? At least 50% of the people are above average.
Well, that is true. This is a big week. Well, not only the most important thing, our 20th podcast, but also yesterday was the day that all the NAR rules went into effect. Well, actually, it's not till the 17th, but yesterday was the day that our MLS implemented so that we could have a week to work out any kinks, and I'm sure there will be a few.
Yeah, it's we've been talking about this for the last couple months. In fact, it's part of what motivated us to start doing a podcast was just to explain some of the details of changes for our clients. And we realized we got to the point where we have not really fully unpacked the process for buyers and what the whole process now new process might look like for buyers. So kind of excited to look at that this evening. But before oh yeah, it's the first time we're recording in the evening also. Usually we
Yes,
record in the afternoon, but we got busy showing buyers houses this afternoon. So
yes. Speaking
that
of,
took priority over our podcast schedule.
yes, and my internet was out
Well,
again.
well, yeah, there was that. I didn't want to throw Xfinity under the bus.
Well, I'm okay throwing them under the bus.
All right, fair enough. So why don't we talk a little bit about the home buying process, and then we could talk about how the new rules will be a little bit new for
Okay.
people. So if you're a home buyer thinking about buying a home, where does how does that journey start?
I think it starts online. You log on to a consumer website and you start looking at houses and you think, hey, I like that one. I wonder if somebody can show me that house.
And I love how you say consumer websites. I like to refer to them as third party websites because they're not me and they're not you and they're somebody else. But
Well, they're the only way that consumers can look at houses online. They can't
yeah,
go to our MLS.
yeah. That actually was one of the major changes, improvements to home buying in in our lifetimes was the internet and the way buyers had immediate access to looking at houses online on their own with or without an agent. Do you remember the days when the MLS would publish a book and you had to go down as an agent and go down and look at that, or maybe your broker bought a copy of it and you had to go through and they had one photo maybe.
I do not remember those days. By the time I started in real estate, we had converted over to an online MLS. There was no more book.
Oh,
And
you didn't have to do that. You're lucky.
I did not have to do that, no. And I was in a technical job before I was in real estate, so it was just second nature to me to log on to the computer and start looking at listings. I think a lot of the older agents in my office, and there were a lot of them, struggled with it because some didn't even have a computer, much less an email address to create a login. And a lot of them left the business at that time. But no, I never had a book. I never used the book.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then it used to be before the internet that the brokers and agents had to go out on brokers tour and preview the houses because that was the only way they could see what new inventory there was so that that weekend they could go out with their buyers and pick and choose which houses they were going to see. But it's really revolutionized the home buying process. Changed it definitely when that happened, changed the role of real estate agents, that they were less of the bird dogging for their clients and could focus on some of the more, I wouldn't say more important, but other important aspects of home buying. All right.
When I got into the business, there was only one picture online, just the front of the house. And so we were still touring and previewing houses, trying to get every single one, out to see every single one so that we knew what fit our clients' wants and needs, and we could call them and say, let's go look at this house.
Yeah.
It wasn't until maybe 3 or 4 years later when they finally allowed 9 photos, a whole 9 photos.
And now we're up to 40. I think we could do 40 on our local MLS board.
Yeah, way too many in my opinion.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
there's only so many pictures of a living room that you can take, and
yes.
some people go way overboard. Hey, do you have a favorite order to put photos into the MLS for a listing? Like, are there certain rooms or images that you think need to be closer to the front?
Well, I think kitchens are a big deal for most people, and so I like to put the kitchens first. Obviously, the front of the house is first, and the walkway, and our infamous front door. We always have a picture of the front door, but then I like to do the kitchen first.
It certainly is the most expensive room in the house, and how well a kitchen is done can really set a tone for a buyer, whether they're interested in it or not.
Yeah.
Certainly, if cabinets and countertops and appliances are all updated or recently installed and in good condition, that can make a huge difference on somebody's interest. Because bedrooms, quite frankly, a fresh paint job is all they really need to really update them, but a kitchen can be a bigger expense. Yeah.
You know what's funny is that the trend is away. I just read this in the New York Times the other day. The trend really is getting away from cooking on a stovetop at night. People are using the little high-end toaster ovens
Yeah.
and air fryers to cook dinner. And I mean, some of the kitchens that we see in our local area, people spend $100,000 on them, and they're
Yeah.
either going out for dinner or they're using an air fryer and a toaster oven to make dinner.
Yeah.
Or DoorDash.
Or DoorDash until you run out of money, and then you go
Exactly.
back to, I'm going to cook my oatmeal 3 times a day. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So buyers are first step is, yeah, they decide they want to buy a house, and even before they know what they're doing or what they can afford, they're online looking at houses
Yep.
and falling in love with houses. So when they want to take action, what previously, maybe the next step might have been to get pre-approved, and that still might be an okay second step.
Huh?
And then sometime down the line, they finally decide to contact an agent,
Mhm.
and that's going to be a little bit different. So, yeah.
Well, and if I can interject, it is different for us. By the time when someone calls us, they've usually been online looking at houses, but I would say 80% of the time they have not talked to a lender yet.
Oh, yeah, I guess that is true.
Yeah, I mean, we direct them to, a couple of our lenders that we match make, depending on what we think their borrowing needs are. And that really starts the process because you can't make an offer on a house in our market without having a pre-approval letter. I hate to keep going back to the old days, but when I first got into the business, you could write an offer without a pre-approval letter. And then once they got the offer accepted, you went off and got pre-approved by a lender. It just seems so antiquated to do it that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's good that it works. Anyway, we send them off to a lender.
And recently we had it's actually a buyer we're working with right now. They had started the process their own without an agent, and they did get pre-approved ahead of time, which was really a smart thing to do. And so as we were, interviewing each other, they trying to decide whether they wanted to work with us, and us trying to help understand what their needs were and where they were in the process. Turned out they were using our favorite lender.
Yes,
And,
I
and if
know.
you're and if you're active in our on our podcast, you'll remember one of our first guests was Arlo Zorner,
Yep.
and that was the lender that they were working with, and so that was a kind of a fun. I don't think that solidified it, but it was definitely icing on the cake of us getting a trusting relationship with these particular clients. At that time, they were still potential clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it felt like, okay, we're on the same page right now. Let's figure out what kind of house you want to buy.
Yeah. I think that the other thing that buyers are used to do without an agent was they would go to open houses on weekends. I know that my wife and I, even when well, I don't know if we ever did, we weren't actively searching, but it had to be a strong idea that it was a possibility, and then we would go look at houses. Um, and my wife is in the industry also, so there's a little professional curiosity for on her sake as well. In fact, she's been in the industry longer than I have, and at some point she got tired of me taking her to open houses because I was just curious about it. And she goes, "Maybe you should get your license because I don't need to keep going to these open houses with you if you're just doing it for your fun for fun." So, uh,
Well, you know the famous story about when I first got into the business, I showed one of our clients, we still have this woman as a client. I hope she's listening to this podcast. And I showed her over 500 homes
yes,
and eventually sold her one and eventually became friends with her. And even after I sold her and her husband a house and they had moved in, she continued to go to open houses because she liked doing it.
yeah, yeah. There's just, yeah, that would be a little bit crass. Sometimes people refer to it as house porn, but sometimes looking online at the house and all the photos, and I wouldn't say jealous or envious of most of the things I look at, but just get ideas for how you might want to remodel your kitchen or
Yep,
make some improvement in your backyard, and you see
yep.
some nice feature the way somebody's done a fire pit or something, and like, yeah, that's a fun idea to see what's been done because a house never looks better than when it's on the market. As soon as you move into it, it's got all of your stuff in it, and my stuff doesn't look as good as the staging stuff. So
Well, we're closing one tomorrow. And when we got it all ready to go and staged, the sellers went over there to have a look at it. And she called and said, if we weren't really happy where we are, we would move back in and live in that house because it looks so great.
yeah, we hear that comment a lot, and every once in a while you hear a seller decide, "Wow, I didn't know my house could look this good," and they do move back into it. It hasn't happened to me. Has that happened to you?
It's happened to me once.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, it happens. It's not a bad thing. Obviously, we like to work and get paid for it, but there's nothing better than doing such a great job that a client loves what you've done, and it just
Yeah.
didn't know that that was going to be the buyer. The buyer is the person who already owned the house, and
Yep.
yeah,
We had gotten it ready and it had been staged and Summer had photographed it. This was before you and I were partners. And the client came over to see it and she's like, I don't want to sell my house. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all this furniture that the
yeah,
state
yeah,
put in? Staging is expensive. It was a very expensive staging job. It was a fairly good size house. And luckily I had another listing that I had just signed. And so I called the stager and said, can you come get the furniture from this house and take it over and install it in the other house? And she did.
yeah.
Luckily, very easygoing about that. And it looked great in the second house too. So, and my client
Nice.
back into the house that she thought she was going to sell.
Oh, well, there you go.
So one of the rules, and I think it's going to become a law, or at least it's case law, as you say, coming out of this lawsuit and this settlement that followed it, is that every buyer will have to find, interview, hire, and buyer's agent and sign what's called a buyer broker agreement. It's a contract between the two of them saying, I want to hire you to represent me in the sale of a house. And they can be exclusive or non-exclusive. And I think they're good for 90 days, right?
Yep.
Although they can be canceled with 30 days notice. So that's step number one, and that is something in our area that is completely new. I know other states have been doing it for ages, but it hasn't been normal here. Now it's going to be required.
And just for the little add-on, which we might talk more detail later, not only is an agreement to hire the agent, but compensation is agreed to at that point.
Absolutely.
Um, and we anticipate that being a percentage of the purchase price should a purchase be concluded. It could be a flat fee potentially, just depend on what each agent and the buyers they're working with agree upon. And so, as an agent, we're not allowed to show properties to buyers without that signed agreement, and especially if we want to get paid.
Yeah.
So
But
that's
they can go to an open house before
but
they hired an agent on
yeah.
their own.
But even on that open house, that agent hosting the open house is required, and I say required in quotes, I should do my air quotes, to have all of the buyers that come into that open house either show that they are working with an agent by having that document with them or a photo of it,
Yeah.
or require them to sign in. And essentially, the purpose of that sign is so that the buyer, potential buyer who comes into that open house, understands that the open house agent is not their agent.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's representing the seller and you have to sign something. Now the buyer or the people coming to the open house don't have to sign it, but the open house agent has to ask. Isn't that
Yes.
fun?
That will be fun, yes, because you know how people coming to open houses love to talk to the agent. You know, they do everything they can to kind of avoid us.
Yep.
Um, and all of a sudden they're gonna have to talk to us.
Well, one of the first rules of marketing is to only market the way that you like being marketed to. And I hate it when people ask me unsolicited my information just so that I can do something that, it's an open house. I thought you were advertising that anybody could come in and look at this house. Why do I now need to sign in? Um, so
As a
Mr. and
matter
Mrs.
of fact,
Buyer listening, this is not the agents who want to do this. Um,
well,
and
a couple of weeks ago, we went out to look at houses and it was you and
with
I.
our clients,
And we got stopped at the door by an agent who was working with the listing agent. She was I don't know what you want to call her, a new agent. And she just stopped us right at the door and said we needed to sign in. And you signed in.
well, Mickey Mouse signed in.
Yes. It says you have to sign they can ask you to sign in. It doesn't say that you have to put your real name there. So
Yeah.
you will
So,
be
so
known
my
as.
recommendation to all you buyers out there is you don't have to be goofy like I was. Well, actually, I was Mickey. You can be goofy, but um, you don't have to give contact information. And if they want a name, part of it is for their security and, insurance and things like that. You don't want them to market to you. You don't have to give any contact information whatsoever. If it's advertised as an open house, they have to let you in.
Yeah.
If you are working with an agent, you should have some document with you, either in your photo stream saved to your home screen, that you can show them so they don't get too pushy with you. And we know that there are agents out there that will be pushy, and on behalf of the industry, we apologize. Because like I said, we only want to market the way that we like to be marketed to, and we don't like that. So,
Well, and the other thing, we like to give our clients a stack of our business cards. So if they want to go look at open houses alone, which oftentimes they do, they can walk in the door and they can hand our card to the listing agent and say, I have an agent.
yep.
And then they can look at the house in peace and quiet without somebody following them around and saying, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
Yep.
So, yeah, it's really important. We have been so focused on the changes in the way we work, particularly for the sellers, that we haven't really talked about the buyers. And I'm not sure how the buyers are getting the information that they need to know moving forward about what they have to do, because they don't have to just kind of find somebody, who happens to be an agent and say, will you write an offer for me? It is much different than it used to be.
Yeah. And one of the things that you just mentioned, that the practice in our area of somebody being pre-approved before they go looking at houses, that was an agent's choice up until now. Kind of prerogative. Sometimes it was clear that someone could buy a home, and for others they were less sure about what their budget was, and so it was very common practice for you and I, before we started wasting our clients' time or our time, to have them go get pre-approved, because the worst thing that could happen is to have somebody fall in love with a house they can't afford. And so getting that pre-approval, which would help you understand what your monthly expense would be, as
Mhm.
well as the purchase price, then you could shop for the appropriate house
Yeah.
for you. So what's different now is that part of this buyer broker form is an addendum that shows that you have the capacity to buy a home, and that's the pre-approval essentially does that. That shows to everybody officially what you can afford, so that we as agents are showing you we're not trying to upsell you on something that you can't afford.
Right, right. Yeah, agents have been accused of that for years, and I don't know really why anybody would do that, because why try to sell somebody a house that they can't afford when the goal is to sell them a house and close escrow?
Yeah.
Never made sense to me.
Well, and even with that pre-approval letter, it's good to have that sober conversation with our clients, so that just because a lender says you can afford $1 million, you may not like the monthly payment on that, and so your budget might be 900,000, because at a million, you're house poor is the expression. You won't be able to afford to do anything else, or if there's any calamity to the house, you won't have the resources to take care of it.
Right. Well, we had something like that happen last week. We were gonna write an offer for a couple on a house, and we had them, as we do at the moment, had them go off and shop for insurance, home insurance, before we wrote the offer, so they, one, could see if the house was insurable, and two, find out what the cost was gonna be. And it turned out that the cost was gonna be $7,200 a year, at which point they could no longer afford that house. It knocked their ratios out of whack, and they could not afford that house anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was really it was well, we offered them good advice. It was because had they gone farther down that road and then couldn't get the insurance that they wanted, it would have been heartbreaking. So it was heartbreaking as it was, but at least they weren't in contract and had to worry about the details of that.
I think that, we do so much more than just put people in a car and drive them around and show them houses. It's certainly going to be important that as brokers/agents, that we prove our value to potential buyers. And I think that's hard for both you and I, because we don't like talking about ourselves or saying we're really good at what we do. It is not in our nature to do that, but we're gonna have to figure out how to do that. And I mean, that's a prime example, having somebody shop for insurance before they get into contract and find out that they can't actually have the house, if even if an offer has been accepted. So trying to, limit that heartbreak, as you
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah. Well, you know my philosophy on this kind of like yeah, market the way you want to be marketed to. I don't like to tell people that how good we are. I'd rather just be good and show them, right?
Mhm.
Like, the demonstrate by our actions and sharing of our wisdom and our experience. Like this is where you're getting the goods rather than here, let me tell you how good I am. Because it sounds a little creepy when you start having to start sounding like a used car salesman. If I have to tell you I'm good, I'm probably not that good. You know what I mean? Like it, but if I
I
can demonstrate how good I am, you'll see it and you'll trust me.
So, you and I disagree on this, because even though I don't like telling people how good we are, you don't sometimes have a chance to prove how good you are, and you've got to tell them up front. Especially now, we can't work with clients or buyers until we have a buyer broker agreement. So we're going to have to talk to them up front and say, this is what we can do for you, because we're not going to have a chance to go out and look at a few houses and have them get to learn and figure out how we work and what we bring to the whole process. So
You mean we shouldn't be telling people that we've been part of President's Club for X number of years in a row, and now we're on the President's Elite Club, and I think did we make President Emeritus because we made so many President's Club? Like we're not supposed to say any of that. Notice how I asked you the question, but I didn't tell everybody that that's what we were.
to be honest, I forgot that we were part of that.
Yeah, well, see, there you go. You forget.
In real estate, you're only as good as your last sale.
Yeah. Well, as
So,
long as we're on that route, so we talked about what a buyer needs to do as far as getting ready to go home shopping. So they hire an agent. In theory, we've said that they probably should interview some agents, and then they get pre-approved, and then we'll go out and look at houses. What are the things that you think buyers should look for in an agent when they're interviewing agents, besides just the fee, which I know will be as we say with sellers, price is always the most important. But what is it that buyers are going to get just in general from agents, or and then more specifically maybe from us?
mhm. I think, knowledge about houses, is pretty high up there. I think that's something that particularly you, bring to the process because of your background. And I think most agents don't have that degree in construction management like you do, or the personal experience of, adding a second story to your own home and knowing what that feels like and what to look for. So that's pretty important. A strong sense of what's going on in the market And not only in general, but specifically because we know markets can change from week to week to week, you know? Areas, knowing areas and what the schools are like and, you know, where the shopping is and how the traffic is and is there a BART station nearby? So that's important. How to write a good, strong offer. It's more than, we found this out on, a listing when we had a brand newly licensed agent who wasn't really an agent, who wrote an offer for himself. And really with his money and his qualifications, he should have aced that offer and gotten it, but he didn't know how to write the offer. He
Yeah,
didn't.
just because he had a license didn't mean he knew how to do real estate.
I think he was a tech guy
Yes.
and he just thought, I'm gonna save some money, and I'm gonna write my own offer. And I don't know how long he had been doing it, but he needed an agent because he didn't know how to compete with other buyers.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't working in the industry.
He had $1 million down,
Yeah,
and he should have been able to write that non-contingent on loan and non-contingent on appraisal, because there was no way that that loan or that appraisal were going to get rejected.
yeah.
Um, it's
Well,
interesting. You talk about knowing, going back to the beginning of what you said, knowing a product. This last year I bought a car, and I had been researching electric vehicles.
mhm,
And so I went down to the Volkswagen dealership to look at their ID4, because both my brother and my brother-in-law both bought them last year or the year before. And so I was like, well, I should check these out. And I go in, and they say, oh, well, oh, so and so's the expert on electric vehicles. And he comes out, and he didn't know diddly about the electric vehicle. And part of me didn't surprise. I mean, a lot of car salesmen don't know how to fix the cars they're selling, but he couldn't tell me like hardly any details about this vehicle, because it was so different than the rest of Volkswagen's fleet.
wow.
I think that that's true with houses. And I think you sell yourself short a little bit when you put it back on my plate, because I do have a little bit more hands-on experience. But with your 20 plus years of experience, you know the product, to
Mhm,
put it, kind of bluntly that way. And you know things about how houses are put together, and you've looked at enough inspections and reports to know where the problems are going to happen. And
yeah,
when a report says X, Y, and Z, that means you need to go ask somebody else a question. And when it says A, B, and C, that's just a handyman fix. And
yeah.
and so I appreciate you putting that, giving me credit where my undergrad degree is, but you've earned it the hard way, um, through
Thank you.
experience. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we were always learning. I mean, I am amazed in this business that after all this time that I've spent selling houses, representing buyers and sellers, that I still learn something almost every day.
Yeah. Well, that's part of what makes it fun, because even if you go sell a house in a particular track where you know that all the builders were, built at the same time, they've all been updated slightly differently, and you always see something new and some idea. There was
Yeah.
a very unique thing I saw at a house, this last year. A client asked us to come over. They um, are a retired couple thinking about selling their house sometime in the future, and wanted to do whatever updates along the way. So they were showing me all these unique things, including it had a dog doorbell. Now, the dog doorbell was by the back door, and the husband had made this like 4 inch by 4 inch um, pad, that when the dog had to go out, he would come touch his nose to this doorbell pad, and the
That
and
is
the doorbell would ring, and then he would sit and wait for mom or dad to come let him out so that he could do his business.
oh, that
And
is so funny.
yeah, it was hilarious. I think I have a video of it. I should see if I could post it, but
I would love
it
to
was
see.
fantastic. I,
You know, broker had a $6.5 million house on the market a few years ago that had its own doggy room.
oh
Um,
yeah,
it had a little place for a bed, elevated and nice comfy mattress or decorate in a decorator fabric. So the dog could climb into it and go to sleep. And then it had separate drawers, pull out drawers like you would have for like in a bakery for flour and sugar, only it was filled with different kinds of kibble. And it had its own little doggy shower, so you could give the dog a bath. But I did not see a doorbell. That would have been perfect.
yeah, yeah. How fun.
Yeah, it was really, yeah, I guess in a $6.5 million house, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. So you see some agents that are area experts, who sell in one neighborhood in particular, and there is some value to that. You and I use a little bit different philosophy. We focus on customer service, and we'll go wherever our clients take us. Consequently, we work in lots of different communities, and I think that this has actually helped our clients more so than if we were neighborhood experts. Because occasionally a client will think that they want to move to a certain area and have a certain set of things they want. Um, but because we have a broader knowledge of inventory in different communities, you think, remember the one of your quilting friends who needed a quilting room, and
Yep.
um I mean,
Well,
like she wanted a quilting room so much that they were thinking, it was a retired empty nester couple, thinking about using the primary bedroom in some of these houses because it was the biggest room as her quilting room because she needed the space for a
yep.
dream board and for all the fabric. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah, she had one, I think one whole pod full of fabric. And
Yeah.
so that's way more than will fit in a little 10 by 10 bedroom. And
Yeah.
that doesn't even include the sewing machine. And most quilters, I don't know if you know this, most quilters have 5 or 6 or 7 machines. I only have two. Uh, but I mean, they just keep buying them. They can only use one at a time. And that doesn't even include the 14-foot long arm, you know. So
Yeah.
she needed a big room, and you really kind of glommed onto that and eventually figured out the perfect house for them.
Well, because we sold a model, this was in Danville, to a couple the previous year, and it had this perfect room that could have, depending on the particular house, either was a bedroom or a second family room upstairs.
Yep.
And it was about the size of two bedrooms put together.
It was the width
And
of the house, the front of the
yeah,
house.
and it had a vaulted ceiling, so it had high walls, lots
Yeah.
of natural light, so it would be perfect for the creative nature of it. And sure enough, around the corner from that house, a house came on the market, the exact same floor plan. And after we had shown them, I don't know, what felt like probably 50 houses, and the two of them never quite being on the same page about
Yeah.
one would like one would like the other. And really, the stickler in all of them was where the quilt room. And sure enough, she saw this house, and that was the house that for them. And largely because we had that expanded knowledge, they weren't looking in Danville necessarily.
Yeah.
And it was perfect. So
That was a win for you.
yeah, I think, that
Market.
when buyers are interviewing agents, they should look and see not only how many transactions a person has done, but also kind of geographically, do they have a breadth of knowledge? Because sometimes just knowing one neighborhood isn't enough. That there are other possibilities at work, and,
Mm.
that's part of the fun of the matchmaking and the figuring the puzzle out how to make it work for our buyers.
It really is one of my favorite parts of the business is taking buyers out the first couple times. I mean, I love showing them houses all the time, but that first couple times when we're walking through houses and we ask them to verbalize what they like and what they don't like, that is such a fun part of the process because we get to learn about them and probably hear things that we didn't hear when we were sitting in the conference room doing an interview, you know?
You get
Uh,
to hear a little bit about hopes and dreams, and it's oftentimes like a couple weeks in that finally somebody giggly says, well, we're expecting our first, or something like that, right?
yes, yes. The things
um
we learn about people.
yeah, all the personal things.
Yeah.
What are some other interesting things besides quilt rooms that people have asked us to look for?
Well, I keep think we worked with this one couple for a couple of years because they had a very specific um a house in a very specific area that they were looking for. And one of the first things that they told us was it's just the two of us. We don't plan to have any kids, but we would like a master bedroom shower that's big enough for 4 people.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm not sure we should go down that path.
Probably not. Although I mean, it sounds very interesting, but what it turned out was that they had two really big dogs and they wanted to be able to wash those dogs in that big shower. So
Yeah, yeah. And we found them that after a couple years of looking.
good.
Actually, do you remember what was really interesting about that one? That the house that they ended up buying, they saw it was either 1 or 2 years prior to that, and they were away for the weekend when it came on the market, and it went pending before they got back to town. So they didn't even get a chance to look at it more than the pictures.
Yeah.
And the the people who bought it moved to the area to be near kids, and their kids got relocated, and so they're like, we don't know anybody here, and
Yeah.
they put it back on the market, so our clients got a second dip at it, and it was perfect.
They put it back on the market and we were over there showing it within hours.
Yeah,
I don't even think it was actually on the market yet. It was coming soon. And
yeah,
we preemptive offer and we got that baby in the contract
yeah,
and a four-person shower.
yeah. And our clients basically opened up their checkbook and said, "Here, take all my money."
Yes, they did. They were done. They were
They
ready
were
to
they were
go.
very happy with that. Yeah. So,
I
uh,
you get some very funny requests when you're out looking at houses with people, you know,
what
and
other?
experiences too, you know.
Yeah. What are some other things buyers should be thinking about when they're looking at agents? I mean, I think that like one of the things that's underrated that people don't always appreciate is so I've been in the business 12 years and you've been in the business about twice that long. And 12 years seems like a long time. I've been involved in hundreds of transactions, everything from a $100,000 mobile home to a multi-million dollar properties in La Miranda and Danville and Alamo.
Yeah.
Um, but up until the last 6 months or a year, I have only been in an escalating market as an agent. I came in just during the recession. So when I started, I wasn't doing a lot of business, but the business that was being done was still short sales and REOs. So by the
Yeah.
time I started doing, I had one short sale, but by the time I started actually getting business, it was an escalating market. Values were going up, interest rates were low.
Yeah.
And while intellectually I know what it looks like and how to write an offer in a even market or a buyer's market, I've
Mhm.
only done it a few times. But the fact that you have 20 plus years, you've seen a lot of different markets. And so there's a big difference between 10 years of the same experience and 20 years or 10 years of different experiences. And you bring a lot of knowledge and history and a variety of experiences that most of the agents that are certainly agents that have just been in the market a few years, let alone like me, even 10 years get to do. Are, so Sherry, I was just based on your little bit longer history in the market, whether there's things that you wish buyers would know when it becomes an even market or even a buyer's market, how to position themselves.
Yeah, I think we're kind of going through that right now to a certain degree. There are still multiple offers on many homes, but there are a lot of homes that are sitting there. And I think it's really important that you have an agent who knows when you don't have to, as you said, open up your checkbook and just say, take all my money or waive all your contingencies. There are a lot of houses right now where you can have contingencies and you can protect your deposit and you can take time to do your own inspections and even get an appraisal and make sure that it comes in. And you need to have an agent who does a fair amount of business to know when that market changes because there's no big announcement that says, hello, market's changing. You've got to be involved and say, oh, we're having a little shift here. What's going on? Oh, I better talk to my buyer about this and help protect them. And I mean, our goal ultimately is always to get them the best possible price. And sometimes that's at odds in a seller's market because there is no best possible price. It's just like, how much do I have to spend to get this house?
Mm.
But I think that's really an important thing to know, the subtleties of the market.
So why might a buyer under these new circumstances just choose to work with the listing agent, essentially having the listing agent function as a dual agent? Why is it important that a buyer would have their own agent?
Well, I think you and I always say that in the very simplest of terms, a listing agent has made a commitment to the seller to represent their best interests. When a buyer's agent works with a buyer, they have to make a commitment to that buyer to represent their best interest. When you've got a listing agent who's representing both parties, there's one party and maybe two parties that are not getting a commitment to represent their best interest simply. You can't do both things. You can't be that person for two different a buyer and a seller essentially.
It's still legal for agents to do this is referred to as dual agency, but ethically it seems really challenging. I mean, you and I have occasionally, under certain circumstances, done that. I can think of one particular time where basically the buyer and seller asked me to mediate. This is just before you and I were partners, a transaction, and they had to essentially do the negotiations without me. I mean, I helped pass metaphorically the paper back and forth between the two, like I was, Carter during the, peace talks back in the 70s. Um,
That made,
shuttle diplomacy, right?
uh-huh,
Um, um, but you can't give either party advice. You can just say, they've offered 1 million.
yeah,
What do you want to do?
yeah,
I'm going to counter at 1.2. All right. They countered at 1.2. What do you want to do? Well, do you think that they'll let me get it for 1.1? I don't know. Write your offer. I
yeah,
mean, you just feel like well, obviously we're not worth anything if that's all we're doing. And
yeah.
so that's part of that dilemma. But also, when it comes to disclosures, I think that is pretty even. We have obligations even when we're representing the seller that disclose anything that we know about the property. Sometimes our seller doesn't like that, but
Mhm,
in the state of California, we have that fiduciary responsibility to be truthful to all parties, and
mhm.
especially when it comes to disclosures. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here for buyers and why they might want to work with an agent and not just work with the listing agent on a particular property. Obviously, everybody's knowledge base is a little bit different. There are some people that might be prepared to buy a house without an agent. Um, and there are most of us that if you're not an expert in the field and you don't pick it up every day and look at it and know what's happening both
Mhm.
both in the trends of the market but also in the longevity of it, there's a lot of mistakes. We could be like that young man who was the tech expert who went out and got his license and thought that's all he needed to write an offer, and he was not even close on that particular case, even though he had the means to buy that house. And he needed somebody to help him evaluate the house for its strengths as a product, and then also how to write an offer that was compelling and how to navigate the whole system.
And I want to just say that it was very kind of you to take him aside afterwards and say, here are some things that you could do differently, and maybe make your offer stronger because the poor guy, he didn't have a clue and he needed a house. I don't know how long he had been looking, but for a really long time. And hopefully by now, he's learned how to write an offer and found his home so that he and his wife can move into it,
Yeah,
which is the goal was all along.
exactly. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this week, our 20th episode of The Real Story with Adam and Sherry. If you liked it, please like and share with your family and friends. If you're looking for a real estate agent to either buy or sell a house, please be sure to look us up. Our contact info's all around. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.